I know that some of you are not going to like what I'm going to say now, and it is to some extent, it's in regard to the David Bowie death. He died yesterday. He was 69. He died of cancer. We don't know what kind of a cancer. And with respect to those that have passed, I would say Bowie was a magnificent music maker, even a storyteller. But I here is where I depart. I have listened to Bowie. I enjoyed his music. It's exciting. It had qualities. It has elements what we as people enjoy, the entertainment part of this music. And I'm going to try and put this in perspective the way I look at my own experience of somebody like Bowie in the context of what we're in, which is the age of fission, what I say. Now, I'm not very much liked for my comments. I have made several statements about the culture of death, and you can go off. People can go off whichever way they want on YouTube and criticize. But I think it's more than me standing here criticizing something. When I say the culture of death, and people that flow in and out of that culture of death without resistance are suspect to me. And I feel that Bowie had this quality of being able to shapeshift into this culture, this what I call the culture of death. And I understand that he had a family. He was probably a good person in very many different ways, but with such a high profile. And people all have their own issues. They have to deal with their lives as individuals, not as stars, but with such a high profile. I have to tell you, the guy creeped me out. He really creeped me out with his whole transsexual kind of feeling. And this has nothing to do with gender bending stuff. This has to do with flowing in with some sort of a culture that does not support life. Okay, fine. You can go off and say, oh, but his music was brilliant. I was commenting on Anish Kapoor, this conceptual artist who does sort of freaky mirror stuff and color study things that have evoke eternity, But what I'm going to say now, even though that Bowie, he was an activist on the AIDS issue, he did concerts with Elton John and Freddie Mercury. Freddie Mercury was absolutely magnificent. He died of cancer. Cancer, AIDS. And he was an activist on the AIDS side. But how could he have missed? The way I admit I missed up until Fukushima, even with Chernobyl, I missed. We live in the age of fission. And I'm not any extraordinary artist in that sense that I say to myself, well, you have to recognize everything, but this is so obvious. The cover-up of Fukushima and the death from nuclear, and they're dying. They're gonna keel over like flies. And AIDS, now being an AIDS activist and not coming out on the nature, what is AIDS? Autoimmune deficiency syndrome. They try to shove it down our throats with a virus. It's not a virus. AIDS is the body weakening from toxicity. And what is the worst toxicity on this planet if it isn't the nuclear isotopes that are being released by all the 400 and some nuclear plants out there, especially now Fukushima. So here's my synopsis on Bowie, with all respect to Bowie as a magician in his musical field. It lacks the defense of life. And people say, oh no, the music itself is life. No, it needs to be defended. And people can come in, critics. Some artists aren't really aware of the depth of the work, and critics come in after time and analyze and understand. And this is a reasonable thing as well. But what I'm trying to say is, the stars, these icons of our culture, let us down. They let us down. They entertain us. They make us feel good for a minute. It's like having a hit and you feel sort of a bit woozy with the whatever it is that you've experienced, and then your life goes on in the same rut. And it's hard to understand I mean, the criticisms I get for making harsh comments that people like Bjork or this Anish Kapoor or other artists that are producing work that in essence have qualities that make us feel good about ourselves, but they don't defend the work. They don't defend the work because they've missed the age of fiction. They've all missed it. And if you look into history, the artists were of their time and they're recognized later. You know, poster child Vincent. And I think Vincent's treatment of yellow is the precursor to the nuclear age. They hijacked Vincent's yellow. That's what I say. He understood something about the energy of the sun should be left where it is. He appreciated it. And I can go into a dissertation on Vincent's yellow. I might do that. But the point is that there is, to the extent that we now have such incredible knowledge of everything going on. Vincent didn't have the internet. We have the internet, so we know. And I will not back down from my criticism of these icons that have provided us with magnificent entertainment at times. And this particular person, and I'm sorry the way he had to die. It's difficult for these families to witness, to see these cancer victims shrivel away. My father had cancer, my mother had cancer. They shriveled away. I understand the power of this disease, which is why I understand we need to speak out. Why? Why do we have AIDS? Why is this cancer an epidemic now? Why? Why is it that not go in peace, get pissed off? This is why I originally associated myself with Blanche, with his tirades, with his relentless tirades to this day, this fight, this angry fight. But more than that, each person, this is my perception, and I, as a painter, what I try to understand about my own work is to counter this culture of death, not to slip into it like Bowie did and do his stuff. And it wasn't subversive. It wasn't subversive. He created a level of entertainment that people hook into and end up in the same place where they started. That's what I say. And you're not going to like this, I guess, because his music was fabulous. But there's a creepy thing about this whole aura around this person, this brilliant music maker, storyteller. It's my feeling anyway. And I will continue to defend what I consider to be the real, true advocates on my side, even though I may love even some of their work, but they have no value to me unless they come out and defend life in a very principled way. And art is you cannot separate this activity and say, well, it's just some intellectual exercise. Well, what is the end result? Where do we want to end up? Where does something take us? And I'm not saying go from point A and know where point B is going to be. I don't know. It's curious. I'm curious. I don't know. But at least within that process, there has to be a feeling like, I'm not going to let this one slip away and have like a bit of a hit or whatever. And, you know, you're back to square one because we're now in the worst situation we've ever been in as not just a species, but all life on this planet. And they all miss it. They don't open their pie holes. And to come out on AIDS and not understand the nuclear issue is totally irrelevant then. Well, they won't open their mouths on nuclear because they're going to be cut off at the knees. That's why. That's why they don't talk about it. And I'm so sorry that he had to suffer through this vicious disease. No one should have to go through this. But as far as a person, and my comment is, there's something wrong here. And stop admiring the people that aren't helping us.